How's it going, everybody? We're just taking a nice hike here. This is Chloe. She is almost 9 months old. She'll be 9 months next week. This is our golden retriever puppy. I think I've shown her on this channel before. I'm not sure. But yeah, just out for a hike. I'm off of work today. I do have at least some work, just some part-time work right now after getting laid off from my full-time job. As you can see, there's a lot of four-wheeler activity out here, so it can get pretty muddy. I'm actually on an old road that was probably decommissioned a very, very long time ago, and now it's mostly used for hiking and snowmobiles and four-wheelers, as you can see. I forget that I think this is technically, it used to be called, or still is called on the tax maps, Old Chesterfield Road. So there's a lot of these in the area where I live, which is cool because it's still all public right of way, so you can still walk on it. I don't know the legality about taking four-wheelers and stuff on it. A lot of places are much more open to snowmobiles because they don't cause as much damage to the land, because when there's snow and ice on the ground is frozen, so you don't really alter it. So four-wheeling in a lot of places is kind of a vague area, depending. So people still do it. There's not exactly, I've never seen like a game warden or any cops out in this area, and I've been on this literally hundreds of times. At this point, I've lived relatively close to here for 6 years now. I never see, it's also connects two dead-end streets, so never see game wardens, never see cops or anything like that. So for the most part, unless somebody is called out here, you're not going to see any type of state authority or anything like that. And really the only people who would call out here are probably, well, one, the property owners around here. There are already houses on the properties, so they're probably not here to call anyways. And the only people who would normally be out here for any length of time, besides just passing through like myself, would be tree foresters and whatnot, and they're for the most part not going to say anything. And actually, we're going to come up to a spot here that has been logged. It was logged last summer and the summer before that, and we'll actually see a little sign. You see that red sign on the post. This was a pretty popular path, and it says trail bikes and all-terrain vehicles are prohibited from entering this property right here. So going off right here is actually no longer on that public right-of-way. It was just kind of run through this property. Foot traffic is still allowed. For those not familiar, there is a thing called current use in, I don't know if it's in all states, but in this state, if you put your land in current use, it's basically open to the public for some activities, and it gives you a huge tax break on your property. So, I mean, this plot out here, I'm guessing, is somewhere around 50 acres, maybe even more. So they're gonna have it in current use, which means people are allowed to traverse it. So if you were to put no trespassing signs and all that fun stuff, then you'd have to actually take it out of current use, which would be a huge tax penalty, plus you would end up paying a ton more on taxes. So that is why people a lot of the land in this state is open to at least foot traffic. That's kind of like the minimum you can do, but there's also, you can then allow other activities, so whatever activities you want. So you can open it to four-wheelers and snowmobiles, or mountain biking, or rock climbing, and all that fun stuff, but kind of like, and hunting. But yeah, the minimum is like, you have to be able to allow foot traffic through as a minimum requirement to be in current use. And now we're back on the old road once again. Just a little detour back there to get around a water hazard. But yeah, it's fun. Let's see if I can turn this around here. Apparently I cannot switch camera angles, so I'll just try to point it at myself. So that's one of the nice things about living here in New Hampshire. Even though it's such a small state, it has so much open space that you're allowed to travel on. There's tons of these decommissioned roads basically everywhere. And trails, you know, we're talking probably just in actual like official trails, we're probably talking about like 4,000 miles of official trails just in this one state, and this is a very tiny state. And then probably these decommissioned roads, and then you have like here, which I'll be coming to right here, you can see, you know, this is where the logging was all entering. So you have all these logging roads that crisscross everywhere. So you have lots of places to explore legally, which is nice. So it's always fun just to be out here and just enjoy the quiet. There's almost never anybody out here. Once in a while I'll pass somebody coming the opposite direction on foot, but maybe 1 out of 20 times is when I'll actually run into somebody on foot, or run into anybody at all, either on an ATV or something like that. So get out and enjoy some of this and use it, because given how much is out here and how little use a lot of it gets, you can be, if you just kind of find some of the offshoots, you can enjoy alone time and whatnot. Some of the things that I've done to find places like this, look at old topographic maps that usually have decommissioned roads on them, and then just make sure to check the tax records of the town that the property is in, because sometimes you'll find that a lot of railroad beds have actually been turned over to the surrounding landowner. So I have relatives that have old railroad bed that ran through their property, and about 15 years ago, they had been the railroad had been taken out after the hurricane of 38 that came up through New England. It washed out a lot of the railroad beds, so they decided they'd just scrap the lines, and they removed pretty much all the steel to use for World War II. So there's been no trains on those railroad beds since 1938, and maybe 15 years ago, the railroad company that technically owned the railroad bed plus about 10 feet on either side reverted the property rights to the surrounding land owners. So now some of the railroad beds are actually now private property. But again, if it's not marked, if it doesn't have no trespassing signs on it, you're legally allowed to at least foot traffic through it. Then the rest of the allowable traffic is dictated by the landowner. In short, this is a little bit more complicated than that, but if you check the tax maps, if it's still listed on the tax maps as it has a name, has a road, or you can even call the town hall and be like, hey, this road from here to here, is this still public right of way? And a lot of times they'll be able to tell you, but if it's still named, or it could be marked as a class 6, which is basically it's still public, but it is not maintained. It is not town maintained or maintained by the government in any way. Those are passable on foot. And even if it's class 6, I think you're allowed to pass it in a vehicle as well. But some class 6s are, you're gonna need some very high clearance vehicles to traverse them because they get pretty gnarly in places. So just because it's class 6 and you're legally allowed to drive on it doesn't mean that's going to be in any shape to actually drive on it. It's really crazy how many roads go through here. You'll find cellar holes just out in the middle of nowhere. I've done a video about that in the past at the Draper Cemetery. That is at least a half mile from any existing structure out in the middle of the woods. You'll find some cellar holes and be like, okay, there used to be like a little group of homes right here, but they're now gone. And some of them not even have been gone for more than 100 years. And you would never know that the things were there if you didn't come across a little family cemetery that had 10 to 15 graves in it or something like that in the middle of the woods. So here I'm actually coming out this again. This is another road. So I just came out here. This is another road. I forget the name of that one. It might be Old Swansea Road. But here I am still on the class 6 right here, but just over that hump. It goes away, and it's funny, I can actually walk here quicker than I can drive here from the other end. So, see you later.